said, never trust anyone who separates their friendship groups, sipped Hector. We were drinking coffee, of which I was officially on my third iced one of the day. Very Zellennial of me. Moreover, Hector was one of the few people in my life, and maybe the only person, that understood what it was to have a father that had multiple families. Half Filipino, his dad had literally a family in the Philippines while he was raising a family in Puerto Rico and also raising one in New York. I guess the man loved to travel and have sex. Interesting, I said as I sipped. I feel like I have the opposite problem. I love introducing people and setting people up with each other, and then they either like each other more than they like me, or they do not like each other and judge me for liking them. My entire life, I treated my friends like a makeshift family, a window into a home life I did not have. My girlfriends became my sisters, my guy friends, my brothers, and my older friends like parental figures I would never truly experience. Yet I found it hard to bring everyone together in my life without feeling abandoned or like they were all looking at me, wondering how I liked all of them when they did not like each other at all. My father had multiple women in his life, and I truly believe with that level of homemanship, he had to have had more kids. Yet either way, I was the one that was identified, and I never picked up until Hector's statement that my father's hesitancy to bring me more into his world was because I could reveal the different truths he was telling everyone, or rather, different lies. He married my mom, and he may have had plenty of other women of which he passed money to, but he made my mom his emotional and figurative shield, causing his wife to become obsessed with her, thinking he was having an affair with her, but it was really with others, even a few men. Again, I don't judge any sexuality, not when mine has been fluid, yet what I judge are the victims my father has had no problem stirring to hide the desires that really stirred him. It was a rare instance, but when it happened, I loved it. Sleepovers. I actually really liked my dad's side of the family, at least its youth. My cousins were fun, funny, smart, and I shared a lot of interests with them, which made me curious. When it came to likes, I really am my dad's side of the family, from food to film. Yet it was my mother's side of the family that never questioned my presence, even if I loved Don Omar and they preferred Daddy Yankee. Yet it was something one of my aunts and my mother had noted. I was never invited to big family functions. They had a cookout this weekend, my mother said, as she drove me to another aunt's house to my favorite um, as she drove me to another aunt's house to my fave cousins on my dad's side. They were sisters and a brother, and so filled with love and coolness. They really gave me some great memories and even included me in their Sweet 16, which I know now was kind of a rebellious act. Their parties were never just family, and when it came to my father's friends, his inner circle, they had no clue I existed. You should ask why they did not invite you, my mother prompted. I grabbed my sleeping bag, so excited for the fun we were about to all have that I did not care for the fun they were having without me. The weekend was filled with what I expected: good music, good food, good laughs, and good hair. Because my dad's side had curly hair, and they knew all the products I needed to make my curls feel lavish and hydrated. Yet it was the perusing through Facebook photos of the weekend that made me feel not so much isolated as curious. I was not yet picking up a full fact that I made from a prior statement. When it came to my father's family, I could never be with them entirely or with family friends. I was a blatant secret, and it was unfair because I was a full fledged human being. Hey, when was this? I would have liked to come, I said, trying to sound casual, cool, and not at all collected in my FOMO. This past weekend, one of them said casually. Oh, I would have liked to come, I declared, trying to sound like the most nonchalant. My feelings are not hurt that my father treats me like a bastard 14-year-old on the planet. I forgot, said my aunt from across the room abruptly. She was in the kitchen while we were in the living room on the computer, but her words ricocheted with an energy that said, all right, conversation over. Later that night, the girls would tell me that my aunt, who was my father's other's wife, on again, off again bestie, had forbid my attendance of family functions because my her. Whew, I am stuttering today. I'm so sorry. Trump won. We are all stuttering. We're fragile. Later that night, the girls would tell me that my aunt, who was my father's other wife's on again, off again bestie, had received a call from his wife forbidding my attendance of family functions and claiming it was an act of loyalty. My dad supported his other wife so as to avoid questions of his fidelity. She tried to invite you, they said, but she claimed it would have been a betrayal. I understand, I smiled, and we proceeded to cornrow my hair over some Laindia music. I brushed past the surging feeling of pain at how my father and his other wife had campaigned against my presence while acting like they accepted it. I was particularly mad at my father's cowardice, but I did not lie about understanding. Their knowledge of my existence was proof that my father was a con, a liar, and a bigamist. But it was the knowledge of me, not the actuality of me, that was the problem. Because in truth, he was the problem, and he was her problem. So let's discuss. So, my father's wife stalked us, and I remember like I had, pictures, and she did this very weird thing on her Facebook of like always posting near our home. And I remember let me tell you something. I don't know why I did that. I don't know. I printed out the pictures and I wanted to say, you know, if you sometimes my biggest regret with my father and his other wife was not saying how much I knew and being brave enough to lose them because I really didn't want my father in my life. But I felt like I had to because of my mother and Latino definitions of loyalty and this overall grief of like, wow, I'm not going to know what it is to have a good dad. Like, this guy is my dad. He hates me. He sabotages me. He steals from me and my mom. He berates me in public. He plots against me. And if I let him go, I let go of my dad. But if I keep him, I keep somebody who endangers me and has no problem doing it and even enjoys it. And I think it says something about me and my childhood on multiple levels, this story, and my reaction, because I always wanted to confront them more, but I had two people scolding me. My mother, who really wanted me to have a relationship with my dad out of some kind of figurative healing of her own father wound, and my father, who just thought I was a piece of ish. And I may not have acknowledged it within me, but I knew. I knew that confronting my dad was absolutely useless. And I always knew, even in our reconciliation. But I just was shocked because when my when I tried to reconcile with my dad, I thought this is a man who has faced death. He really has come back from the worst of himself. He's has to be humble, right? And he was more arrogant than ever. And I didn't confront him then on how much damage he caused my life because something inside me knew evidence doesn't matter with this guy. Tears don't matter. You are trash to him, even if he lived his life as moving garbage. In his head, you're the trash. Not because you're actually evil, he is. Not because he's a liar, but you're his lie. And when my cousins admitted that to me, I acted casual because A, they were doing my hair and they were cornrowing it and we were listening to La India. And one of the things about having an abusive parent is that you become hyper aware of yourself and this very poor concept of what it is to look cool, what it is to act cool, what it is to smile in pictures even though you want to cry, what it is to kind of look composed as your father verbally assaults you. It's like, what it is to act like you believe everything that's being said, that the sky is actually the ground, that left is actually right, because it's safer for you. You won't get beat down, fall into another plot. And him and his wife were very evil. I got to give it to both of them. But I always excused her evil, and I even wrote to my sister in a text, I feel bad for you, mom. Even and that at that time she was still stalking, but I did because my one of my aunts told me how verbally abusive my father was towards her, how he called her ugly, and he would always call her beastly, and the way he spoke about the women in his life. I have an episode coming up called Pigify. He really, like, he called them the N word, that they were ugly because they were black, and he had such a bitterness and a vitriol towards them. And as somebody who received his vitriol and kind of felt a little mad about it, I felt bad for her because she may have been sinking into her own mental health. But I understood the feeling. My dad treated me like trash, so I had compassion for anybody who was a victim of Mr. H's wickedness, particularly in terms of words. But she was also trying to keep her image, trying to cover up, and she didn't care about me as a child. If anything, she wished I was dead. And that's okay. That's okay. That's on her. But that was my point. It was on them, it was on their marriage. My existence was not a problem, especially because my mother could have easily. I think my father was the third time my mother was engaged, first time she actually married. She could have found, I could have had a totally better, different dad. He inserted himself, literally. And he did that with a lot of women. I'm waiting for a sibling to come forward. Feel free, Daddy Recovery. Send me a message. I already got a few on some other stuff, but I I remember feeling just like, ah. And it's amazing how, as a child, I was so aware and numb all at once. I didn't let myself feel worse, at least not until I was in private and isolated, because I felt like everybody would deny my feelings, even my mom. Everybody just, my mother told me, you just got to handle him. But yet she would tell me to confront it and ask. And it was like this kind of just ask, don't feel policy. Just ask about what they're doing without you, but don't feel bad about it. That's on them. They're missing out because my father's family did like me. He didn't like that they liked me. Like, I did notice at times when I would be allowed to be a part of their world, he would correct me a lot and chastise me if I laughed too loud, if I talked too much. And he didn't do that with his other kids. And in perspective, I realize it's because he didn't respect me and he didn't love me. And he missed out. My God, my dad was such a loser. He didn't love his other kids either. He was just terrified. He was particularly so terrified of my older sister. My God, the copy paste of his other wife. And I just, when you look back at these moments in your life where everybody was perfectly fine with erasing you and perfectly fine with training you how to feel comfortable with being erased, it's such a root in terms of so many of my future dynamics, particularly with men, but even friends and bosses, of just this ability to really handle mistreatment and erasure and quietly gather evidence for this magical, mystical confrontation that I would never have. And I spoke about it in a private episode, in a prior episode. I think I just wanted to confirm with myself that what was happening, that my father was abusive, that my father was malicious, that my mother was wrong, that my mother was getting played, because everybody treated me like I was crazy. And like my father wasn't an addict, like he wasn't a hoe, like he wasn't a liar, like he wasn't a thief. I was crazy for seeing that. I was crazy for not liking that. I was crazy for not staying a victim of that. And when they told me that, once again, there was proof. My father was treating me like a bastard. My father was the one hiding me, even when he was saying he was going to let me in to his world. And I'm, oh, sure. I guess I got to do my hair and listen to La India. And the thing about Hector that launched it was that we were talking. So his dad had multiple families. Damn these Puerto Rican men. Damn these half Puerto Rican men. Damn you. Keep it in the pantalones. And I'm very surprised how many men, and I guess it's common with, per se immigrant men. Puerto Rico is a part of the U.S., but that kind of capacity to have multiple families, and because you're going back and forth, and you really do have a good cover up. Oh, I gotta go check on my mom. Boom, get another person pregnant, leave her on the island. Oh, I work abroad, because like there I had cousins and uncles that did odd jobs. Like one of them was electrician, the other one, I don't know how to say it in English. I don't know, soldado. Like I don't know what to call it. So the what is it? I don't know how to say it in English. Welder. I had welders in my family, so they had to travel, and but they didn't have to sleep around. I'll tell you that. And sometimes I wonder. We were talking about it, and I was talking about this feeling I have of I love to bring everybody together, but then I always feel insecure about it. If A, my friends don't like each other, which happens, not everybody who likes you likes each other, but it's interesting because the times that my friends have not liked each other, it was because one of them felt the other was toxic, particularly toxic towards me. And it's always interesting because one of them is right about the other. The flip side of that is I've introduced people to each other, and they really liked each other, and they became better friends than they were with me, and that triggers my abandonment issues and this feeling of I'm not introducing people so they could go off to the sunset without me. I'm introducing people so that they could be all a part of my sunset. Like you guys got to be my family. We've all got to stick together. And it was funny, this kind of juxtaposition we were noting at our father's ability to kind of really keep, like, almost sickly, this ability to like really hide and have multiple personalities and multiple lives and multiple families and multiple worlds. And I do think one of the mysteries in my head was with my father's love letters, whether or not he really did love my mom. And I say that because I do know for a fact that my father cheated on his other wife, not just like he married my mom, but he slept around on his other wife. My mother was not the first, and she wasn't the last. And so I guess my curiosity, my fascination with my dad is this kind of like this ability to be an addict, but truly call yourself a man who with a disease, to be a hoe, but call yourself a man in love, right? Like that twisting of words to mask actions, that twisting of lives to mask your lies. And one of the ways he did it was just making sure everybody was separate. And what's so crazy is I would find proof to justify my feelings, but I would never, I don't know how to explain it. It was like I was just trying to make sure I was clear with me that everybody was acting crazy. Like I was the sane one. It wasn't even to confront. And I find that really sad for me. Like, as I was writing this story, well, this reality, because this happened, I felt sad for me. There were moments where I was like, aw, because I truly was helpless to all these adult figures that did not care about me at all. Even my mother's care for me was veiled by this attempt for her to heal a father wound and hide her shame, because my father was always threatening her. Oh, you take me to court, I'll win. I've got friends, I'm a lawyer, I know the system, always threatening. But the problem is, he had more crimes. At the end of the day, he was a lawyer, but he was a criminal. And I couldn't say that. I couldn't confront him. And I got so used to not confronting people or seeing the validity and the value of just being able to tell somebody, I know you're a liar. I know you're a hoe. I know you're an addict. And you're going to deny it, but there's power in me speaking my truth. I do think, especially after my final, reunion with my dad, that sometimes closure, it's not about talking with the other person, it's about telling the other person that you knew exactly who they were and not holding back and not worrying about their feelings. Because even at the end of our relationship, I was still protecting my dad and still saying weird stuff like, you're a good person. This guy put me in student debt with purpose. This guy made sure I couldn't get into law school, that I didn't get into law school, because he feared me learning the very laws that would prove he is a criminal. But I don't need to be a lawyer for him to be a criminal. I don't need to be a lawyer to prove he's a criminal. My father's only way of protecting himself was by separating people, not by quitting crime, not by actually hiding his crime, but making sure his victims didn't talk to each other. And when they did, kind of convincing them to keep the conversation limited. Because that's what happened when my aunt said that. Oh, we forgot, as if that didn't hurt less. You know? As if that didn't hurt less. Oh, forgot to invite a whole human being that I managed to invite for weekend sleepovers, just not weekend parties at my house. Somehow the party and the sleepover, one got a roofie, the other one didn't. One got a roofie, the other one got the roof. Man, it sucks. It sucks to be a victim to a loser. It sucks to be a victim to a horrible human being. It sucks to be a victim to a man who is a racist, misogynist, plotting, cruel, victim complex mother effer. And all he got was money. And he thought he built himself because he was able to take other people's energy, their luck, their money, his clients, my mom, their minds, his wife's mind. He was able to lie to his grandchildren so that they never knew the real him, because the real him is empty. That's why he was able to build separate worlds. He was connected to none of them. He felt nothing. And he blamed it on mommy issues, but he didn't even love his mother. He was born evil and empty. And I can't believe till this day that was my dad. But I understand, in terms of karma, why I got such an evil, empty human being as my dad. It's funny because I do astrology. And my father has some placements. I don't want to go into that. because this is about healing. And I know astrology after Donald Trump's win, the astrology TikTok is suffering because they were all like Kamala, Kamala. And I was like, ooh, 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 ooh. I don't think that. But it's hard because people use astrology to give hope, and it should give hope, but it also gives reality checks. And I have to say, my dad is evil. Just on astrology alone, that man has issues, ancient, brought it from many lives, here to hurt, born to hurt for sure. But thinks he's the one who's hurt. He will always think he's the victim. He will die thinking he's the victim. But he will also die alone, which is so interesting. He did so much to live this delusion where everybody surrounded him and said, Mr. H, you're a good man. And I think he would be shocked to know the opposite is what will happen. Just not even on astrology, just on crime, energy, karma. And that was my dad. And I say this because as victims, people judge our process. People will judge a child for gathering evidence on their dad, for recording him, for for doing that for like decades, for copying pictures, for doing these meek kind of, oh, cool, you didn't invite me. Okay, guys, you will judge my meekness. You will judge my my moves, and I judged them too. But it's because I was deemed the craziest person when really I was just the one who wanted love. That's I swear to you, as I proceed and I talk about all the evil things my dad did to me, there are moments even today I cannot believe he couldn't just love me. Because that was the thing, all that abuse, all that wickedness, all that cruelty, all that crime. I was so ready to forgive him. And I did again and again and again and again and again, just because I said, he told me, I'm only going to give you love. I'm not going to give you anything else, even though he was giving me abuse. But there was a part of me that wanted to believe him so badly, I stayed in the abuse. And I looked for the abuse in others because I, even now, cannot believe my father will never love me. Never loved me. And the irony of my dad is that's all he wanted, to be loved. And he missed the prime candidate in me. Because my love, I mean, just on the fact of how long I loved him, is so unlimited, so unconditional, so healing, so wonderful. I mean, this guy tore me up, told me his darkest secrets, even ones he forgot, and shocking ones too. I remember, I can't forget this because I recorded our last, I recorded our first conversation when we met. And he goes, and you felt when I sent those letters that I wasn't acknowledging you. This is what he said specifically. And I wrote about it in a prior episode. It made me feel like when I look back at the conversation, all he did was acknowledge what I was saying. Like all he did was say back to me what I said. And I really thought when I hear me talking back to him, I really thought, I don't know how to explain it. I was in such delusion. I wasn't doing anything to work against him. I was really doing everything, including recording, in hopes that he would love me, in hopes that I could just prove to him that he wasn't being as good as he thought he was, so that he could change and be better to me. I had no idea that that was not at all his intention. He really was just feeding me any BS that I could get full off of. And my God, my bar was low. I had no boundaries with that man. He even started, we went to the basilica. We went to church and he said, I tried to kill myself twice. And he totally forgot I had two suicide attempts. And he started going off about how he tried to end his own life. Completely forgetting I did too. And in part because of all the abuse he caused. And he didn't care. I'm sure even today he just would have wished it was successful because that's how dark he is. And I have to accept that what cannot love will not love me. And that's the feat of a lot of people in this world, but especially women right now post election. They are